Professor Breen Brown's research shows that vulnerability fosters good emotional and mental health. It is a sign of courage. We become more resilient and brave when we embrace who we truly are and what we are feeling. The Vulnerable Scientist podcast is a space for scientists to tell their honest and authentic stories. I am your host, Sarah Nyakeri, who happens to be a scientist, informal science communicator, and I help scientists create personal websites. If you want to support this show, go to www.patreon.com/thevulnerable-scientist. You can also follow this podcast on all social media platforms at TV Scientist Pod. So once you finished your PhD, what's that feeling after you have a doctor behind your name? Before your name?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights and memories that I remember. And I remember smiling so much. I don't think I've ever had that ever since then. That day, I smiled so much that I had muscle pain. Have you ever had that?
Yeah,
where you can't smile anymore.
Yeah,
that's how happy I was. I was like, oh, it's hurting. I can't smile anymore.
Okay, that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you save money to go backpacking? Those are questions people don't ask, but I ask.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. To be honest, I was not very good at saving money, but I was lucky because the last 6 months of my PhD, I did a so-called wrap-up postdoc. Because officially my PhD was over, but I still had like a few months to finish up the project. So officially they're not allowed to then pay you a PhD salary. So they started paying me a postdoc salary, which is like almost double. And I was like, oh my God, I'm rich. So, I had been living on a PhD salary for 3 years, and now all of a sudden I had the double. So it became easy for me to save half of that salary for those last months. And I was able to use that money to go traveling.
So once you said, then you came back to find a job through networking. What was that? Can you just take us through after that?
Yeah, well, again, I realized that we are not trained in career development. Absolutely. Like, people are clueless, really. And I was so clueless about how do you find a job? How do you communicate your skills? I mean, how do you even figure out what your skills are? Because your skills is not just a degree. It's not like, here's a PhD. That's not your skills. So I felt like I was, when I came back from my trip, it was 2008, and it was the financial crisis. And everybody was saying there aren't any jobs. It was impossible to find a job. And I even started applying for waitressing. I just needed money. I was like, hey, I'm willing to do whatever job. I need money. I wouldn't even get those jobs. I'm like, oh my God, I felt so useless.
Oh, man.
So then I started just talking to my friends. I was just so sad and depressed, and I can't find a job, and what's going on, and we're in Europe. I mean, you would think there's a good job market. So when I went to visit my friends back in Germany, so I had moved back to Sweden, back to my family's place because I was unemployed with no money. And I visited my friends. And then somebody there from my former institute said, well, actually, there's this project management position, and I think you would be a great fit. You're very good with people. You're social. You're creative. I think you could do this. So that's basically how it happened. Very smoothly. I barely had to apply. I just had a Zoom call with the professor, and he's like, yeah, I like you. You're hired. And then I got the job.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Do you think the recommendation played a part?
Huge. And it does. If somebody says today, no, I'm just going to send these CVs. No, please don't do that. For several reasons. I mean, first of all, it's kind of like you committing to a long-term relationship without even knowing the person. Like, who would move in with somebody? Would you guys move in with somebody if you don't even know the person? And this is the same thing what people do with jobs. They apply to these companies based on an ad. This is kind of like moving in with somebody based on an ad they posted. Like, yeah, I'm moving in with this guy in New York. I
Oh my
saw this
God.
ad and it looks really nice. He seems like a nice guy. I mean, does that make sense to you, Sam?
Oh my, I've never looked at it like
Who does that? Nobody would do that when it comes to dating. But when
Yeah.
it comes to jobs, guess how much time we spend working in our lifetime? In our lifetime, we're going to spend 70% of our time working. That's way more time than we spend with our partners, with our kids. Most of our time goes to work. And time is probably the most precious thing we have in our life. Most precious. We don't get it back. So how can we just like throw that away and go like apply to these random companies and positions? We don't know the people. We don't know the boss. We don't know the culture. We don't really know much about these places besides the ad. And maybe if we do a little bit of research on the website. But if anybody has ever had a real job after they've studied, they know that ads and website do not tell you the whole truth, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. So that is why if you really want to land a job that is fulfilling and that you feel I'm going to fit in, I want to stay there long term, you want to network, you want to talk to people who work there. You want to talk to people who have worked there before because they will probably give you the whole truth since they have nothing to lose. They left the company. People who work there might still not tell you everything in case, you know, the boss is an idiot and they're not going to tell you. The boss is an idiot, don't come here. So that's why talking to people is so important. And this could be uncomfortable. I know that. A lot of people that I coach tell me, what do you mean I should go and reach out to total strangers? I'm like, yeah, this is how me and Sarah met. We were total strangers, right?
Yeah.
Now we're not.
Yeah.
So just do that. Get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an amazing platform to connect with people in all fields, all over the world. And believe it or not, most people are kind and they want to help. And they're willing to help. If you ask, I would love to have, 20 minutes of your time. Can you tell me about your work and the company? Do that. And then you'll find out, is this a place I want to commit to?
I love that analogy. I don't know. I'm still thinking about that analogy even now. Like, why do we do that? Why have I been doing that myself?
Yeah. I actually just came up with it. I love analogies, by the way. I think it's funny. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you lasted there for how long? The diabetes, the project management position?
Yeah. I mean, that was a project-based position because it was EU funded. So the EU gives you this like a specific time frame. So that was anyway just for 2 years. But I remember during this job, I had such a boring time. I mean, honestly, you know how when you drag yourself to work or you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I don't want to go to work. I hate this. Somebody shoot me, please. It was like that for 2 years. I mean, because I get bored easily if I'm not challenged, if I'm not growing, I get so bored. And I was telling myself I'd rather work as a waitress because then I at least get to meet people. There's variety. So I ended up having this crazy idea during this time to open my own swing bar because that's one of my hobbies. Like if you're going to ask me, what's your hobby? It's dancing. And I used to be obsessed with swing dancing and I would travel all over the world on weekends. Well, not the world, Europe. I would go to different countries in Europe to go to swing festivals. And that was kind of my drug to get this endorphin and dopamine to compensate for the boring job on the weekends. I would travel, dance, have a lot of fun so I could put up with the boring job. But then I got so obsessed with dancing. So one day I had this idea, I'm just going to do this full time. Like this is going to be my next career. And my idea was to open a bar, a swing bar, to have live jazz music and in classes, and it would be like going back in the days to Harlem, people would enter the bar and you just feel like you're in the 30s. So, but then I realized I have zero experience in running a bar. I have no idea what it's like. So I ended up working in the evenings and on the weekends in a bar as a waitress for 3 to 4 months next to my project management position. So if somebody's wondering I'm curious about this next career and I don't have any idea. Why not try it out like I did? I had like a full-time project management job, but I spent my weekends and evenings waitressing in a bar to get a feeling, what is it like to run a bar? And then after these 3-4 months, I was like, no way, it's too hard.
Sorry, let me interrupt you. Could you repeat what you just said?
What I said is like, if you're considering another career that is very different and you don't have an idea what that career is like, dip your feet in the water. You don't have to jump straight into the cold water and you've never tried it before. So that could be doing an internship or getting a part-time job or working remotely or, something similar to what I did. And you will get that experience. And then you'll find out whether this is what you want or not.
Yeah. So you did it for 3 months. After 4 months, then you're like, I was like, yeah, no. I was like, running a bar, oh my God, it's so hard work. You close the bar, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. You're exhausted. You're dealing with drunk people. I'm like, no way. But I was still very passionate about the dancing. So I decided then, that's it. I'll just do dancing. I'm not going to do a bar. So I moved to Berlin. After this project management position was over, I moved to Berlin. And I registered my company as a freelancer, as a dancer, dance teacher, event manager. And I basically did that full time for almost 2 years in Berlin. You were running your own thing?
My own thing. So I would hire like a room in a dance studio that already existed. And then I would advertise on social media. I created a website and I started advertising dance classes. And then it grew. Yeah.
Tell me about that marketing part. How was that for you, having to do all these things on your own and learning how to do them and successfully doing them?
This is where I want people to understand that our superpower as scientists, guess what it is?
I don't know.
It's the superpower I use to go from scientist, project manager to dancer and like running my own business.
Project management.
It's learning. Where our superpower is learning. We are able to learn, and I've realized that over and over, whatever career I transition into, I am able to learn like bum, bum, bum. Like, we're so used to processing a lot of information and extract the important stuff and connect the dots. So what it is I need to do. How do I do this? How do I apply that? What's not working? Okay, let me tweak this. Let me adjust that. What's the variable that needs to change? And remember, you only change one variable at a time. So you know what's working, what's not working, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that was definitely the insight I learned from doing all of these different careers is like my superpower, and all of our superpowers is learning, because that's what we're trained in.
Okay.
So if we're okay with doing that, like, you're never really starting from scratch. A lot of people say, I'm starting from scratch. No, you're starting from scratch and learning the technical aspect of the new field. But your abilities are not from scratch. Your abilities are with you. They're like this toolbox you carry with you. You don't lose the toolbox. But where you apply the toolbox, that's where it's new. Does that make sense? That analogy? Yeah. The newness is where you apply the tools, but the tools are with you. Yeah. So I applied these tools when I was learning marketing. I was like, okay, let me get on social media and see what works, what doesn't work. Is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? Is it doing live events? Is it doing taster classes? Like, what's going to work? And I would just experiment.
How has that influenced your career now? Because you're still in business.
Oh, yeah. So technically, that business was a failure because it wasn't sustainable financially, right? So I had an amazing time. I learned so much. I grew as a person. I got to travel. I even got to travel to other countries to teach at festivals. I was on TV and I was on radio and I was hanging backstage with these cool musicians and getting like free food and drinks, you name it. I mean, it almost felt like being like a little celebrity. Right? It was so much fun. So from that point of view, it was a huge success, the experience. But when it comes to the business aspect, it was a failure because I wasn't able to keep the money, cash flow sustainable. So towards the end of it, I was struggling every month, like, oh my God, am I going to be able to pay my bills? Like, I don't have enough students, or I don't have enough gigs coming up. So that's why I decided to quit, because I felt it was too stressful. But having had that experience, already run a business way back then, that helped me so much this time around, because I learned from those mistakes. I learned what I should do, what I shouldn't do when it comes to business, and what's most important.
Okay, so what did you do after the 2 years? Where did you go to?
Yeah, so while I was being a dance teacher, I realized that I love teaching. And already as a PhD student, I realized that, because as soon as I was asked, can you teach master students? Or there are these high school kids coming, can you talk to them about being a scientist? I would light up, like when people just light up. I would be like shining and like super happy and like, yes, please, I would love to teach them. And those are the clues. If somebody's asking, I don't know what to do after, or I don't know what it is that I should be doing, notice what lights you up.
Yeah.
What raises your energy, where you just get so excited, or maybe the things that are so easy, when you do them, time just flies. Oh, 1 hour passed and I'm still like working on this PowerPoint because I love doing PowerPoint slides. So just notice, and those are clues. So for me, I already knew I love teaching, but I didn't want to go back to university to study again to become a teacher. I'm like, no way. I did a PhD. I don't want to study again. And everybody told me, if you want to become a teacher, you need a teaching degree. You need a teaching certificate. You cannot just go into teaching. That is true partially. That's why I also want to tell people, get advice, but do research. Don't just rely on people's advice, because many times people's advice is inaccurate. Okay. So I just listened to a few people telling me, no, you can't do that. You need a certificate. And then later on, I ended up realizing, being a dance teacher, I love teaching. I love it. And I thought, you know what? I should just go back and combine the two things that I love, science and teaching. So I applied with no experience. Listen to this, guys. No experience, because I hear so many people saying, I don't have experience, so I cannot apply for the job. Apply anyway. No experience, no degree in teaching. I applied for a substitute position for 6 months. It was in German. My German was not that good in a high school with like grades, the worst age group ever, teenagers, from grade 7 to grade 10. The hormones are going crazy. Yeah. So imagine you don't speak the language properly. You're teaching physics, chemistry, biology, technology in a language you don't master. And you're trying to manage 30 raging teenagers.
Oh my goodness, I can imagine.
Now ask me, how the hell did they hire me? I mean, you would think these guys are crazy. But I remember during the interview with my broken German, the principal was like, so why should we hire you? I mean, you don't have experience. You've never worked as a teacher. I was like, but I love teaching. I love it. And then I showed him that I do have experience.
Say it in German.
Ich liebe unterrichten. Ich liebe es. Es ist meine Leidenschaft. It's my passion. Yeah, and he was like, and he could see how passionate I was, and I was, because I was convinced that this is what I want to do. So that's another tip I want to give you. I hope you guys are taking notes if you're listening to this podcast. One tip: when you're really passionate about something, your enthusiasm compensates for the technical skills that are lacking. Because when an employer sees that you burn for it, you have the desire, they'll be like, she's going to learn. Whatever she needs to learn, she will learn it on the job. And that's why they gave me the job, because I was like, you know what? I'm a scientist. I'm used to working like 60 hours a week. Easy. If it's going to take me weekends, evenings, I am in. I am fully in. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. And he's like, fine. Okay. So they gave me the job.
How long did you do it?
6 months. So initially it was actually only 3 months substitute, but then they ended up extending it for another 3 months. So I got to, again, try out I got to try out the job before I committed fully. So after these 6 months, I realized I actually do love teaching. And although I went through hell, I mean, many days I would go home crying from work, actually, because it's hard to work with kids. Kids can be so cruel, like really. But I still loved it, because those moments when you would have a child that you see the light in their eyes when you teach them something and they get excited about biology. Or I remember one class when we did microscopy on onions, and oh my God, the kids, they got so excited about seeing the cells, and they're like, this is so beautiful. Those moments were like worth gold for me as a teacher, because I love to see them get excited about a topic that I am excited about. So I was like, that's it, I want to do this. So then this is what I did. I applied to become a teacher remotely. So you can do this, actually. So I was studying for 1.5 years remotely at a university while working as a teacher.
What were you studying?
To become a teacher. So I got a master in education, because if you want to get a permanent position as a school teacher in most countries, I know this might vary from country to country, but in Europe and Germany and Sweden, that's the case. You want a permanent position, you have to have a degree. You cannot just get a position if you're just a scientist, right? So I said, okay, I'm going all in. So while I was working as a teacher in Germany, I got my degree in education remotely.
Okay.
So again, this is a second example for a lot of people out there who are listening, that you can do things on the side and you can always develop these skills. It's not either or. It's not this or that. You can do both.
How are you funding it?
Well, I was getting paid. I was working as a teacher. Part-time. I was working part-time as a teacher so that I could study at the same time.
So what happened after the 1.5 years? Okay, in total 2 years of teaching. Okay, still teaching and...
Yeah, I know now you guys are getting confused now with my career journey, because it's a lot of jumping around. So after the swing dancing, I did the science teaching, right? Now, I stuck to that career for 4 years, but I studied for 1.5 years. Yeah. So after after I got my graduation, I moved back to Sweden, and then I worked in Sweden in a private school. Then I changed and I moved to a public school. So I tried both public and private schools in 2 countries, in Germany and Sweden. And 4 years into being a teacher, I realized this is not my place. You know, sometimes, again, this is another lesson I think is valuable to share. That sometimes you don't really know until you've tried it.
Yeah.
You can do the research, you can do an internship, you can do a part-time job, but it's maybe not until you've done it for real. Like, and for me, it took 4 years to do it, that I was like, the educational system is so broken that I felt like I was swimming against the current, you know, like you're swimming and trying so hard to achieve something and change that you want to create, but the current is like coming towards you. And I felt I was the only one trying to do things differently, be innovative, like get the kids to do like TED Talks and grow their own veggies. Like I had so many ideas of how we can evolve as teachers, but then I wasn't getting that support. Like people were lazy, or people like, well, we've been doing this for 30 years. Why change it? It works. I'm like, because we can evolve, we can learn, we can improve things. So I realized that's not the environment I want to be in.
Do you think that's the scientist in you that was doing that?
Totally. That's why I tell you, once a scientist, always a scientist. Because you're always looking for ways to improve things. You're not going to settle with what's working. You're going to be like, what can we do different? How can we improve this?
That is so true. So after that... you're like, okay, so no, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, but then again, I felt, and I know some people can or totally resonate with this feeling. I felt like I was back to being the clueless PhD student again, or like a clueless student. I'm like, now what? What do I do now? I mean, I have a PhD. I tried dancing, project management. Oh, I went back and I studied to become a teacher, but that wasn't the thing for me. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do now? But during this time, when I was actually being a teacher, I went through probably the darkest times of my personal life. So I was around my mid-30s, and I remember sitting alone in my one-bedroom apartment outside of Stockholm, and I just burst down, like I broke down just crying, like uncontrollably. And I was like, and I didn't have an explanation. I just felt this overwhelm of pain and just frustration. Everything was just coming out. And I would talk to my mom and my friends. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. What's wrong with me? I'm just so unhappy, but there is nothing in my life that I can pinpoint that is causing this unhappiness. And I realized like I was on the verge of burnouts. Like I wasn't sleeping. I was having back pain. I was constantly bitter. I was being like a real bitch towards my students as a teacher. And I was like, this is not me. Like, I don't recognize myself anymore. So it's sometimes good to go through these phases because, you know, we can learn lessons in life the hard way, or sometimes we learn it by the nice way, but many times it's the hard way, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of those phases. And at the same time, there was the refugee crisis going on. So this is 2016. And I was watching the news and seeing children drowning and mothers crying. And like that was even making me even more depressed. And I felt like, oh my God, here I am, like worrying, what am I crying about? Like there are people who have real problems out there. And I'm sitting here crying, like I want to do something to help these people. So because I'm actually a native Arab speaker, I thought, oh, I can help them. I can go there and help these refugees. So I quit my job as a science teacher in Sweden, and I signed up with an NGO, a Swedish NGO that was helping people there in the field in Greece. So all these refugees that were coming in the sea from Turkey, crossing over to Greece, they were landing in these camps. And I went there and I spent... Initially, I was only supposed to stay 1 month, but then I just couldn't leave. I couldn't leave. So I ended up staying for 3 months. Yeah. And this was another one of these turning points, because when you see people going through these horrific things, you know, you have like a little kid telling you, yeah, my daddy drowned, or I lost my brother, or a mother, you know, tells a story seeing her son being shot in front of her. I mean, it's horrific things. You cannot imagine human beings going through these things, right? I felt like I wanted to do something, first of all, about my own pain, because I realized the reason why I was going there, because I was having so much pain. And I thought that if I go and help other people, my pain will disappear.
Yeah.
You know that one? You know, when you try to focus on other people so you don't have to deal with your shit? Yeah, exactly. That's what I did. So I think this is where the song I told you about is the perfect message. So I'm going to sing to you, and you, Sarah, if you want to sing it with me, sing.
I want to
sing with
lyrics. Tell me that title. I want to search.
Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I love this song ever since I was a kid. And I learned this. This is the main message I learned from being in the refugee camp. Let's sing it for you, and then we'll talk about the message.
Okay. Bado. Why are we starting? I'm gonna make a change something.
Yeah, go to the chorus. To the chorus, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm starting with the man in the mirror.
Oh.
You're there? You found it?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go, guys. This is a free show for you. from Amani and Sarah. This was not rehearsed. So excuse us if it's not perfectly synchronized.
Yeah.
1, 2, and here we go. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make a change, wait. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change. So
I'm starting with the man in the mirror, of which that is me, right?
Yes.
And I'm asking that man who's me to change his ways. No message could have been clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change. Oh, wow.
Yes. Yes. It is so profound. I tell you, Michael's lyrics. So that's the message I learned.
Hi, I'm glad that you're still here. The conversation still continues as Amani still explains her journey into becoming a career coach for scientists and PhD graduates. And at this point, she was still explaining her before and after and during her PhD, and I decided to split it because it was a bit of a longer episode, and I hope you get to hear the second part of part 2 in the third episode tomorrow. Also on that note, you can also go to successbeyondthelab.com and get free stuff that you can use to up your career. You can also go to her social medias, the LinkedIn page, and reach out to her if you need help with anything. And if you can also sign up for the free coaching session that is on 15th September this year, that 2022, and hope you enjoy that.